if you're in a studio, you're going to need to know about Exposure Simulator. I'm also going to cover why you should absolutely set up a favorites tab in your menu system. Welcome to a new Splashpoint photo video. I've been meaning to record this one for ages and never got around to it. I've been too lazy. I said been too lazy. I have a hobby channel doing videos. I just kind of put this on the back foot for that, and I shouldn't really, because this is kind of work. So this video, I'm going to use my Canon R5. I'm going to talk about Exposure Simulator. If you're new to mirrorless and you've never been in the studio, Exposure Simulator catches everyone out. It catches the most experienced photographers out. I have to explain it to everybody, so you shouldn't be embarrassed by it if you do not know it. I'm hoping some of the things I mentioned in this video, kind of obvious to some, but hopefully eureka moments to others. I'm also going to cover why you should absolutely set up a favorites tab in your menu system. Because if you're like me and you're lazy, you don't want to go looking for all the menu screens to find that one setting you need. And I just have like 4 or 5 settings I use on a regular. In my favorites tab, pick the setting I want, do it that way instead of memorizing where everything is. You know, I'm not Kai Man Wong. I don't make it my habit to know everything about every piece of gear I pick up. I'm pretty lazy. I know what settings I want, I know what settings I need. And if I use them a lot, I'm going to stick them in my favorites. That sounds interesting to you? Stick around. I will tell you how it compares, possibly to DSLR, but it will be a Canon video. I know Exposure Simulator in Sony is known as something different. It's different in Nikon. But if you're in a studio, you're going to need to know about Exposure Simulator. And I'm going to go through some settings on my R5. Okay then, ladies and gents, I'm going to look over here because this is where my computer monitor is. You should now, or very soon, will be seeing a screen recording of what's on my monitor. It will be what is on my camera. But this is probably the best way of me doing it. So here we go. Just click in. What you are seeing is a live view. There you are, if you do not know, or there I am. This is a good time to bring up Exposure Simulator. So, I'm going to go into the menu. I'm already at my favourites, Exposure Simulator. Enable, I'm going to disable it right now. And this is going to show you that my settings, no matter what I do here, do not affect what you are seeing through the camera. The reason that is important in the studio is because you might be shooting at f11, f10, and basically the studio is going to be pitch black because you are using custom manual lighting, not what you are seeing by eye, not what your camera is seeing, and you aren't going to see bugger all unless you turn Exposure Simulator off. So as per mirrorless cameras, I think yes, Exposure Simulator comes on as default. Again, it is Exposure Simulator on Canon. It is different on other brands, but the setting will be an equivalent somewhere within your menus. Yeah, you need to turn it off. Basically, the second you turn it off, you'll be able to see in the dark. You know, you can point this camera anywhere, no matter how dark it is, and it is gonna. It's obviously not going to focus that close because it's my minimal focusing distance. Go in, opening crops, tops, tennis packets. And yeah, no matter what you do, no matter where you face it, no matter if there's no light there, by turning off Exposure Simulator, you're going to be able to see in the dark and you're going to be able to focus on literally anything. We are going to put Exposure Simulator back on the second I change my settings. So if I ramp up the shutter speed, we are now going to change our, quite literally. So let's put it on a studio setting basically. Let's go f14. Let's lower my ISO right down to 100. Let's lower my shutter speed down to 125. You know, imagine we're in the studio now and the strobe lighting, we cannot see anything. The second I move this back over to Exposure Simulator, disable, there you are again. That is me. That is what is recording us right now. Sorry if this is choppy, by the way. I'm not entirely sure how my camera screen record and the dodgy input I'm using, as you can see, is going to show in the edit, but I guess I'll find out. I guess you'll find out. But yeah, so most important, first things first, Exposure Simulator, absolute must know in your studio setting. So this is my custom menu. It is currently set up, not do this. So the reason I do not have on Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and I have airplane mode on is because I found out in the R5, the hard way, that I could have a full battery. I could leave my camera for 3 days and all the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi stuff, even though the camera's turned off, would be running in the background and I'll come back to a flat battery. Yeah, I questioned it and tried to work out why, and it turned out because I simply had all this gumph turned on The S1110 is my mobile phone, because I quite often use it as a remote control from time to time. Quite often from time to time. I think that makes sense, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I would recommend, unless you want connectivity, turn it off, because your battery life is going to be far, far superior. And if you're like got a shoot in 4 days time and you're really, you know, organized, and you've charged your batteries 3 days in advance, and then you're like, they're all charged, and you've left that on, you come back, you might just come back to dead batteries and a dead shoot as a result. So yeah, consider putting airplane mode on. It will be blacked out unless it is off, and then you can click on it. So that's one thing I do. Format card, of course. My card, I could format it at the minute. So my last shoot, again, the colours look completely off on my screen, so I don't know what you guys are seeing. I will see in the post, no doubt. Let's go back to the menu. I can format card. I recommend what you do every shoot is, once you formatted your card, just knock it out anywhere else on the menu apart from format. Because if you leave your camera on, you put it in your bag, and you press format accidentally once, twice, I'm not sure how many times you have to press it. Let's have a look. I have everything I need. Yes, I could just do that now. And let's say I somehow managed to press that 2 or 3 times while it's in my bag, I'm going to lose everything from that shoot. So my next recommendation is just knock it off format. Right, so let's have a look at HDMI mode. I'm going to go down to my keyboard here just to show you what HDMI is. Let's turn up my shutter speed. I'm going to push up my ISO. You're going to see I'm doing something here. I am pressing, I don't know if you can see, my set menu, and I have my ISO on my shutter. This is a habit I developed from photographing live music. I wanted my complete exposure triangle right at my fingertips. So aperture as per the pinwheel as normal, shutter as per that pinwheel as normal, but I can shift is my set button. I can shift, push it down, and change my ISO on the fly. And because I use EF lenses on a R body, I actually have an adapter, and this adapter has a ring on it too. So you can see I can actually change my white balance on the ring. So I have complete control of my white balance on the ring. I have complete control of my ISO. I have complete control of my shutter. I have complete control of my f-stop aperture. And yeah, perfect. I recommend that. That is a setting you should definitely look to put in as a custom setting. I won't cover that right now, how to do it, but if you want to have a look on Tinternet, I'm sure it will show you. But anyway, so let's go back to HDMI. HDR. Let's pick a shutter speed that I can actually vaguely handhold at, because you should really do this on a tripod, not be lazy. So I'm going to say that looks slightly overexposed, but in my experience, HDMI always comes out slightly under. What it is going to do is it is going to take 3 shots. You can hear them right now, they've all gone. You're going to get 3 different exposures, and it's going to put them all together in camera, and it's going to give you a HDMI. So that is basically HDMI, I've got to stop saying that. HDR. So that's going to be your overexposed shot, your, in theory they're calling it underexposed, it is slightly, and then you're in theory on, but that's because I was slightly over. And in my experience, as you can see there, by going slightly over, it actually looks better, because quite often it brings it under for some strange reason, I do not know why. But yeah, so what that is doing is it's bringing the lows up to the middle, the highs down to the middle, and the middle to the middle, and it's kind of try and do a nice smooth transition between all 3, so you're going to get a very epic, colourful, dynamic image that has loads of highs, loads of lows, and in the middle without blowing the highs and without blowing the lows, if that makes sense. And that will also bring me on to another setting I have on here. Once my HDMI, this HDMI, stops playing up and I can get the picture back on. So we are back. There we go. Go back into the menu. So the zebra settings, again, blacked out. You cannot see them. Back in my DSLR days, you could get zebra settings on still photos. For now, for some reason, they only have it on movie shooting mode. Basically, I grew up reading completely self-taught. I read like the Scott Calby books, and they called them blinkies, and anything that was overexposed to white would come up as blinkies, and it would be like a flashing set of lines. They're your zebras. I will show you now. Let's move over to, we're now in video. We'll go back in. Zebra settings are on. Okay, so let's completely pump the exposure. You cannot see this on the screen, but there you go. You can see them there. See those zebra lines? That is basically telling me that anything there that is white has lost all details, is overexposed, and there you go. That is what your zebras are. We are back in picture mode, as it were. Screen viewer display. Now, I am going to go back to video mode for this, because it will show me on both the computer and my back screen, whereas in picture mode it turns off my back screen and only shows me on the computer. But you will see another quirk of mirrorless cameras is there is a little black sensor here, and the second you cover it, because you put your face or your eye up to it, it turns off your LCD screen here and it puts it in the viewer there. And you can turn it off, you can change it, and the reason I have kept my setting here is because I can navigate that and I can choose one or the other, or I can choose it to switch auto, because sometimes that can be a bit annoying depending on what you're shooting. You sometimes just want to get in and go there and it turns off on screen, turns off the other, or you're trying to show a model and you're covering the screen all the time by accident, or it's too close to you because you want to cover the sunlight and it starts turning itself off, or you know, just those little things. Another cool thing, just thought about it, is on a mirrorless camera, because it's an electronic viewfinder, you can literally see your photo. Not right now because it's hooked up to the computer, but if it wasn't, I'd be able to see my photo that I've just taken in the eye cup. So if it's a sunny day, I'll be able to have a look, be able to chimp as they call it, and I'll be able to see whether I want to change anything, whether the exposure is pretty good or not. So that's a cool thing to have in your favorite menu rather than go looking for it. Subject to detect, I actually put this in earlier just to remind myself how to add new thingies. These can follow eyes, they can follow animal eyes, they can follow vehicles, they can follow people or animals in general. Right, so I've moved this back over to picture mode again. You will see that I can use the stick on the back and change where I want my focus point to be. I highly recommend, by the way, if you don't do this already, you choose a singular point, unless you're following a flying animal or something and you just want lock onto anything. You want to be using a singular point. But as mentioned, cameras these days, they do eye autofocus, and that is kind of a default. I actually turn it off because I find it annoying. So I have my what do you want to call it, AFON button. I use that as my eye detect, so I can just press that 9 times out of 10. It will get it right more often than not. But sometimes it thinks like my toes eyes, so it's not perfect. Another tip, if you're old school like me and you want a bit more control and you just don't want your camera to keep making decisions, turn that off, get rid of it. Choose your own singular AF point, and then stick your eye auto detect on a custom menu button on the back that you can just easily press and do back bump focusing. As you probably might be aware, if you're intermediate photographer, that people will use it for servo mode. They'll put the servo, or they'll do half depress shutter on the back and then full depress on the front. I'm hoping this makes sense to you. If it doesn't and you really want to know more, just give me a yell in the comments and I'll try and respond. So yeah, if you want to add extra settings, these are all your various menu settings. You can add in like remote control. I'm not sure what remote control is, but let's have a quick look. Let's stick that in. So let's go back to my favorite menu. My remote control is only available in movie shooting mode. Let's find out what that is. Let's go back here. Able, disable, I have no idea. I imagine it does something. In fact, you can tell me, get in the comments, what the hell does the remote control option do? Because I haven't got Scooby-Doo. I don't think I've ever used it for anything. Right, let's configure. Let's delete. The remote control, because I do not want it in my favorites. And it is, honestly, it's that simple, just to add stuff to your favorites menu. Your favorites menu is the last tab on your, if you're a Canon user, of course, it's the last tab on your menu. See, this is the thing you want to avoid. You don't want to go remembering where all this stuff is that you use on a regular or not. There's 8 sub-menus just in the camera there. And let's go over to AF. We've got another 4 sub-menus there. The playback, or just not even playback, it print order. Another 5 sub-menus there. You got your 2 in your wireless options. You got 6 in your settings. So again, you got exposure level increments. You just got another 5 tabs here, and then finally you get over to your favorites. You know, you don't want to be searching that and trying to work out where your format card tab is and spending like 2 minutes just scrolling through menus. You just want it there. You just want to know where it is and get straight to it. So yeah, that's why I suggest absolutely and utterly favorite menu, lifesaver, absolute beaut, well worth doing. Right, let's talk about some settings on the on your Q menu. Oh, it's not going to show me. That is because I am in video. Let's go back over here. Right. There we go. So AF, if you want to change to a single point rather than these larger thingies that are like center weighted, then this is where you're going to do it in your Q menu, the top AF on your left there. Yeah, you just want to, I mean, you can put tracking, face tracking, but spot AF for me, that's all I really want. If I was taking a selfie, maybe I might put it on I might put it on that, I guess, just to make life a bit easier. Or I would, as said earlier, I'd use my phone as a remote control. I'd look at my screen, put it on a self timer, click it on my eye, put my phone out of sight, out of the way, and that's one way of doing it and keeping it locked on the eye. Okay, let's get back to single point AF. You can have different size AFs in the single point as well, like this second one here. One AF point, look at, it's a lot bigger. You got a lot more to work with, but it's going to be less accurate as a result too. Okay, I got to get used to navigating this Q menu. Shows you how often I use it. One shot and servo, as mentioned earlier. A servo, once a subject passes in front of your focus point, it's going to lock onto that, and then you're going to try and follow it by holding a button half depressed or back button focusing. I'm sure many of you are already aware of this. I don't often use servo, but it's there if you need it. Oops, let's go down. RAW, so I only have one memory card in currently, and I'm recording as compressed RAW, because compressed RAW is a new Canon thing. It takes a RAW file, makes it compressed without losing next to no details and nothing other than the size of the file. So it's just nice to have smaller files and save a bit of space, right? If you want, you can shoot JPEG. So that'd be like a large JPEG, but lower quality, medium, lower, small, lower, S2. I'm not even sure, but as you can see, the 2 is highlighted because I've only got a card in slot 2. You could put 2 cards in at once. You could shoot RAW on one card. You could shoot JPEG on the other if you're doing an event and you want to keep all the RAW files as backup in premium, top-notch quality, so you can edit them at a later date and do that, and then just shoot in JPEG so you can send them off in real time to a media team who haven't got to convert from RAW to JPEG and worry about post-processing, because no RAW file is processed yet. If you're shooting JPEG, it will use the processing of, in fact, what I'm about to show you. So now I've said that, let's go back to RAW. raw compressed, like I say. Let's pop down. Is it going to let me? I'll stop pressing buttons. I don't know. So these are your pre-settings up here. This is going to be your process style if you're shooting JPEG. If you're shooting RAW, this is going to mean absolutely diddly squat. So let's move over to monochrome. Everything now is in black and white. That, believe it or not, if I took a picture now, would still come out color as a RAW photo. That only applies to JPEG. So you can ignore this unless basically you know you're going to shoot a black and white image and you just want to get a vibe for what that black and white image is going to look like on the back of the camera, so you can chimp and get, you know, see if you want to change anything. But that image, despite doing that, is going to still come out color if you shoot in RAW. But yeah, so these settings here basically what process your image if you are gonna send over a JPEG rather than a RAW file. Right, let's get back to what I was talking about. Drive mode, yeah, so single shot. If you're in a studio, I recommend in a single shot because most strobe lights will not be able to keep up with you doing it in continuous shooting. So let's say we're in continuous shooting here, low speed continuous shooting. I have some really fancy Broncolor Ceros. They will keep up with it, but my standard Bowens studio lighting, you know, their refresh time is just not going to keep up with continuous shooting. They're going to need like a second or two to charge up again. Recycle time, I believe that's what you call it. Metering mode, let's be honest, when you have exposure simulator you probably don't need metering mode, but for us who shot events with a DSLR, and like me, if you preferred shooting in manual, I always shoot in manual 9 times out of 10. At the bottom here, let's move my there you go, you can see my right square here. See what I was just highlighting there? That's your meter right there. Anytime it is in the center, it is correctly exposed, which means if you are shooting manual at an event and you want to do it on the fly, you can get a good idea. This is on a DSLR. Right, I'm back. My light on this side just decided to fall off the desk just to be annoying. We were talking about metering modes. Back in the day, DSLR, you cannot see the image you are taking in real time. You cannot see the exposure. Did I explain this earlier with exposure simulator? I just assumed that you knew what it was. So let's go back. Let's go to exposure simulator. Let's disable it. I kind of half told you about it, didn't I? So right now, any picture I take is going to be like a DSLR. I don't know what it's going to look like. It will not look like what you are seeing now. If I move it over to enable, if I change my settings to say this, it can't see nothing. Let's have an underexposed shot, technically. So yeah, just enough for it to focus. That'll be what my camera can see. If I move down my arrow here, you are going to see that when I focus, it's going to tell me that I am a stop and 2/3 underexposure. If I bring it across now, if I move my aperture up to 1.4, knock my shutter speed down, or I can put my ISO up. That, in theory, according to my camera's exposure meter, is telling me that is a well exposed image. If I was shooting manual at an event on a DSLR and I didn't want to use like an aperture priority or shutter priority, I could just use my exposure meter to give me a vague idea of whether my photograph is going to be well exposed without chimping, basically, without seeing what's going on, because DSLRs did not have exposure simulator. But on a camera like this, you can literally just see the image you're taking. It's insane technology. So yeah, if I push up the exposure +3 and then some overexposed, bring it back down, according to that, we are 1/2 over. I would say we're not, but there you go. I'd say that's actually kind of a nice exposure. So back to the Q menu. That's your metering modes. This is center weighted. This is your average. It looks at the whole kind of image, but it decides what's in the middle is most important, and that's going to be what it uses to decide is absolute grey, which is why, by the way, when I was going on about exposure earlier, it's looking for like I can't remember what percentage grey tone it is, and obviously the keyboard's white, which is why it is underexposed when it says it's correct, because it's going, oh, I want that to look grey, when in reality you'd want it to look more white, and then just pump the exposure a bit. Spot metering, so it's now only taking what's in the middle in the spot. Partial metering, I think it's kind of does like center weighted but a bit more. And then evaluative metering kind of looks at the whole scene and decides what it thinks is correct for the exposure, and then whatever happens, like whatever it decides, is going to show in your bottom bar. Again, you probably don't need it for exposure simulator if you have that on. Flicker on off if you are shooting somewhere that has, like my studio, it has a lot of neon lights. Maybe you're doing a bit of video, some are going to flicker, then others it just messes with the shutter speed. You can turn your flicker on and off, and it was going to change the feel of the flicker, something along those lines. Pretty niche. So I always 99.9% of the time have my white balance on just a Kelvin meter, so I can twist it myself. I just don't like the in-camera white balance suggestions. You can, if you shoot raw, of course, change your white balance without affecting a photo. In post, why I would never do that is because it completely changes the mood of the image. If you are photographing something and it's too cold, then it's going to change the psychology of how you feel looking at the image on the back of your camera when you're working with a model, say. And if it's too warm, again, it's going to change the psychology. So try and get the white balance as close as to how you want it. And when it's just on a ring like this, easy done. I pretty much 99% of the time change it anyway, because I find Canons have really magenta skin tones and I don't like that. So I'm always going to tweak my white balance, but just to set the mood of the image, I don't want it too cold, I don't want it too warm, I want it to be preferably correct. With studio lighting, that is usually going to be about 5.6, not with the lighting we got in here, but studio lighting I think is roughly about 5,600. Typically my Bowens are anyway, so that's going to be correct, but you might want to play with it creatively, and it depends on the model skin tone, of course. So that's that. We've already spoken about the processing profiles, auto lighting optimizer disabled in manual and B modes. I only shoot in manual, so it's kind of irrelevant to me. All right, and finally on the Q menu we have full, crop, 101, which is square, which is basically your Insta. Oh, actually it's a lie, it's no longer Insta, is it? Because I think Insta might be 4:3. That's not going to change the screen. 4:3 ratio. So 4:3 is roughly A4. So if you're shooting for a magazine and you don't want to do any guesswork, you could put it in, say, 4:3. However, I would recommend doing it in full, cropping in post, just being aware of the fact that you're going to crop for a magazine and doing it that way. And 16:9 is, of course, video, so like YouTube, widescreen. Yeah, so there's your Q menu. What else was I going to show you? I was going to show you a little something, because I remember looking through my menus earlier and thinking, I'll talk about that. But right now, there you go, because it's in my menu. That's why I was going to talk about it. Image stabilizer on. Still photo IS is always on. It's just gonna, you know, these mirrorlesses have in-body IS now, so you used to just get IS on lenses. Image stabilization just helps you handhold at much slower shutter speeds. It's very easy to take liberties with it though, so be careful. But if we move it over to video mode, and let's go to image stabilization, and this is why I have it on my computer. So if you see that, it's probably going to look quite jolty, my movement. You know, it's going to look a bit meh. Let's move it over and stick it on. See, that should be smoother. In theory, you can tell me whether you think it's smooth or not. We can go to our stabilization mode. You cannot see it on the screen for some reason. When I put it in video mode, it does not show you my Q menu. So I cannot show you my video Q menu, if this makes sense, as a screen record. But I can move it over and put it onto that, and it's going to give you a tighter crop, but it should be giving you a better stabilization. If I drop that down by a thingy, you should, in theory, see it zoom out. I'll let you know once I get there, because I'm rubbish at navigating this menu. So as I do this, there you go, it's zoomed out, which means the stabilization is less. And then if I turn it off completely using the Q menu, it will zoom out even more and the stabilization will be even worse. But as we come in, in theory, if you're just hand holding videos, it will give you smoother video. Like, it will take its time to catch up and just use the whole of the frame by zooming it in and deciding what it should and shouldn't be seeing. I'm not sure that's a technical term. Let's get back to the favorites. That is my favorites menu, basically. That is what I suggest you do if you have any camera. I assume Sony's, Nikon's, they all have favorite menus. Go in there, set up the stuff you are going to use a lot. Just save your time looking through the, if you want to be Kaiman Wong or...
And if you don't want to scratch your expensive filter, what do? You put another one on it. Less expensive. Cheap filter protecting expensive filter protecting expensiver L lens.
These photography forum anal photographers who know everything about every camera they've got, know every placement of every setting in every menu.
Incoming, incoming, incoming.
I mean, Kai's a great photographer, but let's face it, the majority of these guys can't take a picture for fucking toffee. They're a bit shit, but they could talk to you about the specifics of a camera all day long, yet can't take a decent photo. If you don't want to be one of them, just get the shit that you need, stick it in your favorite menu, get to it as quick as you want, when you want, how you want, and boom, happy days. No searching through menus. But again, exposure simulator, if you're ever going into a studio, find it, either stick it in your favorites or remember where it is, because the amount of photographers I have to jump on Google who use different brand cameras, and I'm trying to work out the equivalent of what exposure simulator is in their brand, just so I can turn it on or off. And some photographers just don't listen, because let's be honest, some photographers are arrogant wankers, and you're trying to tell them the reason they can't see in the studio and everything is pitch black is because of this one setting, and they're like, no, I know better, and you're like, fuck off. So yeah, just exposure simulator, learn it, understand what it does. I mean, there's not much to learn, just turn the fucker on or off, and yeah, you're going to solve yourself a lot of problems when you first buy a mirrorless and you go into a studio using manual lighting. Peace.
A new subscriber.